Hello and welcome to Camp, the Catholic audiobook in a month podcast. My name is William Wilson, and today is day 21 of The Little Way of Spiritual Childhood by Father Gabriel Martin. I will be reading Chapter 7, Section 1, which is page 85 through 91 in the paperback. You'll hear about how St. Thérèse abandoned herself because she loved and to also love still more. You'll hear about how abandonment is the product of all the virtues and weaknesses of little children. These include confidence, poverty, littleness, etc. And also how abandonment leads to love, because God alone knows the way that each soul should follow. And finally, how abandonment allows a child to show its love by being completely dependent on God. Let's get started. Section 1. The Role of Holy Abandonment in the Little Way. We may say of holy abandonment, as well as of merciful love, that it is the product at once of all the virtues and of all the weaknesses of the child. It is in the little way, like a crossroads where all ways meet. Littleness leads to it because the little one feels the need of allowing himself to be carried. Weakness runs to it, hoping to find there its surest support. Poverty hastens to come and seek in it its ever-assured sustenance. Confidence, too, tends to it with all its force, because he who trusts instinctively surrenders himself, and great confidence leads to entire abandonment of self into the hands of the friend or father. Above all, abandonment is the end and the outcome of love. To love is to give, but the most perfect manner of giving ourselves, is it not by surrendering self? Abandonment includes the whole gift, together with something more absolute at the heart of it, and something more touching in form of it, which renders it at once more complete and more delicate. It is exactly in that way that St. Thérèse of the Infant Jesus understood it. She conceived abandonment as acting especially through love, which in her case worked in two ways. For holy abandonment appeared to her at once the best means of expressing her love for the good God, and the most efficacious means of raising herself rapidly to the perfection of divine love. So she abandoned herself because she loved, and she abandoned herself in order to love still more. One. How abandonment leads to the perfection of holy love. Jesus, the divine master of pure hearts, had been pleased early to instruct his little victim, and he had shown her that the only road which leads to the divine furnace of love is the abandonment of the little child who sleeps without fear in the Father's arms. Bound for a far distant goal, the object of his ardent desires, what in fact can a child do, who is incapable not only of advancing, but even of discovering the route? All alone in his little bark, lost amidst the waves, in the immensity of a sea interspersed with reefs and fruitful in shipwrecks, where very many of those who commenced the voyage before him have already foundered without having reached the luminous beacon of love. The little one whom Jesus enlightens with his divine light understands that so many sad shipwrecks are due solely to the imprudence of those who wanted to guide their bark for themselves, without knowing their way. And looking towards his Father in heaven, who holds in his hand the winds and the sun, who commands the tempests, and whom the waves obey, and seeing himself the constant object of his most loving attention, he says to himself in his simplicity that, in order to guide his bark, the one thing proper for a little child is to abandon himself, to let his sail be filled at the mercy of the wind. In reality, nothing could be more wise. For what else is the mercy of the wind but the breath of God moving over the world? The Spirit breatheth where he will, and the Spirit of God is love. In allowing himself to be borne along by the wind, it is to love itself, to a love which is infinite in wisdom and in goodness, as well as in power, that the child has entrusted himself. Happy child! God alone, in truth, knows the way that each soul should follow here below. There is nothing more admirable than the variety of the ways by which he leads his elect. But one thing remains invariable, that is the particular love with which he directs, governs, and protects the soul which, entrusting herself to him without reserve, leaves him completely free to lead her on according to his wisdom. At every instant, both outwardly by the course of events and inwardly by the promptings of his grace, he procures for her what is most useful and best for her just at the moment. And so the soul which is most completely given up to abandonment is always the most tenderly fondled, the most powerfully succored, the most constantly laden with the favors of divine goodness. For this reason, there is nothing so sanctifying as abandonment well understood. It is the shortest and safest, and at the same time the pleasantest road by which to arrive at the perfection of love. And it is on this road that little Thérèse has traced her little way, which she said is none other than that of confidence and complete abandonment. Two, how abandonment allows the child to manifest his love. The heart of our saint bore her instinctively towards this complete abandonment, for she saw in it not only the road that leads to the perfection of love, but also the most delicate manifestation of her childlike love. In her sight, before all and above all, God was the Father par excellence, more tender than all fathers and more maternal than a mother. She took delight in singing to him. O thou who didst create the mother's heart, tenderest of fathers to me thou art. My soul love Jesus, O Word eternal. For me thy heart is more than maternal. She saw him always occupied with his child. Thou dost follow and shield me the livelong day. When I call, thou hastest, ne'er a delay. Even playing with his little one, as earthly fathers do with theirs. And when on a time thou dost hide thy face, 'tis thyself dost show me thy hiding place. What her abandonment of herself into the arms of this tender Father was, and how she made of it her heaven on earth, is revealed to us in one of her poems, which helps us to penetrate to the very depths of her beautiful, childlike soul. Several of those verses deserve to be pondered over at length, so as to extract from them their penetrating sweetness and their delightful lessons. But we should fear to rob them of their freshness by trying to explain them. In order to grasp their meaning, it is better that each one should dwell upon them in quiet beneath the gaze of the good God himself, by the light of his grace in the divine intimacy of prayer. My heaven is to feel in me the likeness of the God of power who created me. My heaven is to stay forever in his presence, to call him Father, just his child to be. Safe in his arms divine, near to his sacred face, resting upon his heart, of the storm I have no fear. Abandonment complete. This is my only law. Behold, my heaven here. Now, the child who abandons himself in the arms of a tenderly loved father or mother does not usually calculate the import of his action. He abandons himself as he loves, instinctively. This is exactly what little Thérèse did, or, if she reasoned about her act of abandonment, if she sought advantages in it, they were not so much her own as those of Jesus. What she saw in it, above all, was a means of proving her love to him in a very perfect manner, by rendering herself completely dependent on him and on his holy will, in order the better to give him pleasure. The will of the good God, Saint Thérèse did so love it. Like Jesus himself, she made it the whole nourishment of her soul. She lived on it and concentrated on this holy will all her desires and all the ardor of her prayer, not knowing how to desire anything ardently except the perfect fulfillment of the will of God in her soul. It was in order to accomplish it perfectly that she made herself obedient to the least prescriptions of the rule and of the superiors. And even more, she gazed unceasingly into the eyes of the good God, the expression is her own, in order to read in them what pleased him most and to accomplish it immediately. Now, there is something more perfect than to accomplish ourselves the good pleasure of God by doing what pleases him. It is to leave him free to please himself in us, by directing everything in our life according to his own free will, without taking anything else into consideration except the interests of his glory and the greater joy of his heart. It is to measure our own happiness not according to the good fortune or profit that events bring to us, but according to the opportunities they offer us of procuring the divine good pleasure. To know that the good God was satisfied was sufficient happiness for little Thérèse, and filled her with joy. And so the purest disinterestedness appears to us to be the distinctive mark of her abandonment. This it is that is most prominent in her words, as also in the comparisons she employs to explain her thought. In truth, she desires but one thing, that is, to be in the hands of the child Jesus as a little toy. But a toy of no value, that he can throw on the ground, toss about, pierce, leave in a corner, or else press to his heart, if it so please him, for she desires no other joy but that of making him smile. Or again, what she wishes to be is a rose that sheds its petals beneath the feet of Jesus, one that is treated without care, forgotten, thrown at the mercy of the wind. He may trample it underfoot. He may crush it. That does not matter, provided only it soothes at least his last steps on Calvary. It goes without saying that preferences of a personal nature would be incompatible with such a degree of abandonment. And so Saint Thérèse, in what concerned herself, made it a rule not to be occupied with any particular desires. Indifferent to life or death, although her heart told her that death was the more enviable portion, she abstained from choosing. She left that care to her Father in heaven. What he chooses for me, she said, is what pleases me most. I love all that he does. It happens sometimes, too often, that we go very far in search of perfection, whereas we have it continually within our reach. After all, holiness is nothing else practically than the union of conformity between man's will and God's will. The more perfect this conformity is, that is to say, the more real it is and based on love, the more it unites the creature to the Creator, so that to become a saint, it would suffice to practice perfectly holy abandonment. For in its perfect degree, this abandonment supposes the soul to be altogether absorbed and completely transformed into the will of God. From this we can judge of the value of the little way and of its efficaciousness in the sanctification of souls, since it is nothing else but a life that is all love, united with complete abandonment. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Tomorrow I will read the rest of Chapter 7 on caution in the exercise of abandonment, If you have enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe, rate, share, and help us grow. Also, please check out oratebooks.com, now featuring a short method of mental prayer. In just 72 pages, Father Rodolfi provides a sure method of practicing Catholic meditation and mental prayer, available as a free PDF or in paperback. That's oratebooks.com. To learn more about us and for past episodes, please visit camp.fm. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.